It was 6:45 p.m. on the launch night of Alchemist. I was standing in the foyer, wearing a backless silk dress I had bought specifically to match the slate gray undertones of the dining room walls I had paid for. The venue was perfect. The lighting was perfect. The only thing missing was the man of the hour. Then, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a text. 7 lines that dismantled my life faster than a demolition crew. "I can't do this anymore." Alexander wrote, "Your energy is suffocating my creative process. I need to align with people who understand my vision. Don't come tonight. Security has your photo." He didn't even have the decency to do it before I put on the heels. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from right now. Have you ever had the rug pulled out from under you at the exact moment you thought you were winning? I want to know. I'm not alone in this. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone against the wall. I stood there in the hallway of the penthouse I paid for, and I did what I do best. I analyzed the structure. My name is Victoria. I am 29 years old, and I am a landscape architect. My entire life is built on the principles of structural integrity, foundation, and design. If a retaining wall leans, you reinforce it. If the soil is loose, you anchor it. I realized, standing there in the silence, that I had applied these professional principles to a human being. I stepped back from the shock to look at the blueprint of what we had, to the outside world. Alexander was the charismatic visionary, the chef who was going to redefine Chicago's dining scene. To me, he was a project, a very expensive, very unstable project. Let's look at the numbers, because the numbers don't lie. The penthouse loft we were standing in, with the floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the skyline, $5,500 a month. The lease was signed in my name because his credit score was non-existent. The Range Rover Velar he insisted he needed to arrive at meetings in style, $1,400 a month. Leased in my name. And tonight, the grand opening. That was $50,000 of my personal portfolio, liquidated to serve as seed capital. For 3 years, I had told myself this was partnership. But looking at that text message, I realized it wasn't partnership. It was the trap of normalization. See, when you are a builder by nature, you have a fatal flaw. You look at a person like Alexander, charismatic, talented, but completely unstable, and you don't see a liability. You see a site with potential. You see a fixer-upper. You tell yourself that if you just pour enough resources into the foundation, the structure will hold. You normalize the over-functioning because you are used to doing the heavy lifting. I treated his lack of discipline like a zoning issue I could solve with enough capital. I thought if I built the perfect stage, he would finally perform. But I was wrong. I hadn't built a partner. I had financed a parasite. And he had just made the fatal mistake of severing the host while he was still living inside the body. He thought I was just a checkbook with a pulse. He forgot that before you build anything, you have to know how to clear the site. Most people would have gone to the restaurant. They would have made a scene, flipped tables, screamed at the security guard holding the photo. But I don't deal in drama. I deal in logistics. If the tenant vacates the agreement, you secure the property. I walked back into the living room. It was quiet. The view of the skyline was breathtaking. A view he loved to post on Instagram with captions about the grind. I sat down at my glass desk and opened my laptop. I didn't cry. Tears are for people who have lost something valuable. I hadn't lost anything. I had just stopped bleeding. I opened my banking portal. The screen glowed with the cold, hard reality of my generosity. The first click was the most satisfying. The recurring transfer for the rent, scheduled for the 1st of the month, canceled. The landlord would get a notification in the morning. Next, the car. I called the leasing agency's automated line. I reported a voluntary surrender of the vehicle. I entered the GPS coordinates of the restaurant where it was currently parked with the valet. The keys are with the driver. I told the automated system, come and get it. Then, the utilities, the electric, the gas, the high-speed fiber internet that he needed to stream his inspiration and upload his stories. I logged into each account. I didn't just suspend them. I scheduled a hard disconnect for 8 a.m. the next morning. It was clinical. It was cold. It was efficient. I sat there for a moment, watching the confirmation emails roll in. Each one felt like a brick being removed from his back and placed back onto mine where it belonged. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was a project manager, closing out a failed job site. By midnight, the digital infrastructure of Alexander's life had been dismantled. I closed my laptop, poured myself a glass of wine, and waited for the fallout. For 7 days, there was silence. It was the kind of silence that hangs over a construction site right before the demolition charges go off. I didn't call him. I didn't check his social media. I went to work. I drafted landscape plans for a new botanical garden. And I waited. I knew the silence wasn't peace. It was the pressure building in the pipes. On Tuesday morning, the pressure burst. It didn't come in the form of a screaming voicemail or a drunken text. It came as an email, marked high importance, from an address I didn't recognize: management at alchemistdining.com. The subject line read, "Urgent settlement and transitional support regarding Alexander Vance." I opened it while drinking my morning coffee. The email wasn't written by Alexander. It was written by Brooklyn, the investor he had replaced me with. She had given herself the title of business manager. The audacity was so thick you could pour it on pancakes. "Dear Victoria," it began, "we are writing to address your recent financial sabotage of Mr. Vance's business operations. Your abrupt and malicious cancellation of the utility services and housing agreement has caused significant distress and reputational damage to the Alchemist brand." I took a sip of coffee. It tasted excellent. The email continued, "While we understand emotions are high, business commitments must be honored. The $50,000 you provided was accepted as a gift in good faith. However, to avoid litigation regarding the damages caused by your interference, we are prepared to offer a settlement. You will reinstate the lease on the penthouse for a period of 6 months to serve as transitional housing for Mr. Vance. In exchange, we will agree not to pursue legal action for the disruption of the launch." I read it twice. They were demanding I pay $33,000 in rent for the privilege of not being sued for stopping to pay for a grown man's life. It was extortion wrapped in a vision board. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to Michael. Michael isn't a family lawyer. He is a corporate shark my father keeps on retainer for hostile takeovers. He wears suits that cost more than Alexander's entire wardrobe. And he views emotions as inefficiencies. I met him in his office an hour later. He read the email on his tablet, his face completely expressionless. Then, a small, cold smile touched his lips. "Transitional housing," Michael said, testing the words, like cheap wine. He thinks he's a displaced startup. "This isn't a demand letter, Victoria. It's a confession of insolvency." "Can he sue me?" I asked. "For stopping the payments?" "He can try," Michael said, swiping the email away. "But there is no contract. There is no marriage license. You were a girlfriend, not a venture capital firm. He is trying to enforce a lifestyle subsidy he feels entitled to. It's clumsy. It's disparity. And it gives us permission to stop being polite." Michael opened a file on his laptop. "We aren't going to negotiate a settlement. We are going to issue an eviction notice for the property he is currently squatting in, and a demand for the return of all assets purchased with your funds. We are shifting this from a breakup to a liquidation." "Do it," I said. "But before we send this..." Michael leaned back, studying me. "You need to understand what we are dealing with. You are confused because you think his anger comes from heartbreak. It doesn't." This is where he explained the mechanics of the monster I had been sleeping with. "It's called a narcissistic injury." Michael drew a circle on his notepad. "People like Alexander don't connect with others, they consume them. You were a resource, a battery. When you cut the power..." He didn't feel sad. He felt attacked. To him, your money was his right. By taking it back, you didn't just leave him, you insulted his survival mechanism. He isn't lashing out because he misses you. He is lashing out because a parasite cannot survive without a host. and he is terrified of starving. It clicked. The creative suffocation text. The demands. The threats. It wasn't personal. It was hunger. I had been feeding a void for 3 years, thinking I was filling a foundation. If he wants a war over assets, I said, my mind racing back to the paperwork I had filed months ago. Then we should probably talk about the birthday present. Michael paused. What birthday present? 6 months ago, I said. Alexander wanted to legitimize the restaurant. He wanted to trademark the name Alchemist and copyright the signature menu, but he was too creative to handle the forms. He kept missing deadlines. So, I did it for him. I filed the trademarks, the logo design registration, and the copyright for the menu concepts. Michael went very still. Victoria, whose name is on the filing? I looked at him. He didn't have a credit card to pay the filing fees, and he wasn't listed on the business license yet because of his credit score. So, I filed them in my name. I was going to transfer them to him on opening night as a surprise. A silence stretched across the office. It wasn't a tense silence. It was the silence of a weapon being loaded. You didn't transfer them, Michael asked. No, I said. I never got the chance. He dumped me before I could give him the envelope. Michael turned his laptop around and began typing furiously. The sound was rhythmic, almost musical. So, let me get this straight. Mr. Vance is currently operating a business, soliciting investors, and selling a product using a brand name, logo, and intellectual property that is 100% legally owned by you. Yes, I said. He isn't just an ex-boyfriend anymore, Michael said, looking up with eyes that gleamed with predatory joy. He is a trademark infringer, and we are about to shut down his entire operation. The following morning, I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I didn't engage in a messy social media war. I simply sat in Michael's office and signed a document. It wasn't a long document. It was a cease and desist order, drafted with the kind of lethal precision that costs $600 an hour. We didn't mail it. Michael hired a courier to deliver it to the restaurant at 7:30 p.m. right in the middle of the dinner rush. I wasn't there to see it, but the courier's report was vivid. Alexander was in the dining room, charming a table of potential investors, pouring wine he hadn't paid for. The courier walked up, handed him the heavy envelope, and said loud enough for the table to hear, "You've been served." The letter was simple. It informed Mr. Vance that he was in violation of federal trademark laws. It demanded that he immediately cease using the name Alchemist, remove all signage bearing the logo, and stop serving any dishes from the copyrighted menu. Effectively, it ordered him to close his restaurant immediately or face damages of up to $150,000 per violation. Simultaneously, Michael sent a separate letter to the landlord of the commercial space. It was a formal notice that I doubt the primary financial guarantor on the lease was withdrawing my support due to a material breach of trust. Without my credit score anchoring the lease, the default clauses triggered instantly. I went home to the penthouse, poured a glass of wine, and waited. It took exactly 45 minutes. The intercom buzzed. I walked to the wall panel and pressed the video button. There he was, Alexander, in his chef's whites, his face twisted in a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Standing next to him was Brooklyn, looking less like a business manager and more like a deer in headlights. He hammered the call button again. "Victoria, I know you're up there. Let me in." I pressed the talk button. "No." "You are ruining my life," he screamed, his voice cracking. "You are destroying my art. Do you have any idea who is in that dining room right now? You are embarrassing me in front of investors." "They aren't investors, Alexander," I said, my voice calm, metallic through the speaker system. "They are witnesses." "You can't do this," he shouted. "I built this my vision, my menu." "Actually," I said, "according to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, I built it. You just plated it." Brooklyn stepped forward, trying to look authoritative. Victoria, this is petty. We can work this out. If you just let us up. Brooklyn. I interrupted her. You claim to be an investor? Did you run due diligence? Did you check the deed on the restaurant? Did you check the trademark filings? Because if you had, you would know that the man standing next to you owns nothing. His name isn't on the lease. It isn't on the car. It isn't even on the menu. You aren't investing in a business. You are investing in a ghost. I saw the color drain from her face. She looked at Alexander. And for the first time, I saw doubt. Go home, Alexander. I said. The movers are coming tomorrow at 8 a.m. to remove my furniture from my penthouse. If you are still here, the police will remove you for trespassing. I released the button. The screen went dark. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in collapse. Brooklyn, realizing she had bought into a fraud, pulled her funding immediately. Without capital to rebrand or pay the lease, the restaurant closed its doors the next morning. The leasing agency picked up the Range Rover from the valet stand before lunch. By Friday, Alexander was back in his parents' basement. He tried to spin it online, posting vague, victim-blaming statuses about toxic partners and creative jealousy. But without the backdrop of the penthouse or the restaurant, nobody engaged. The silence was absolute. On Saturday morning, I stood in the penthouse. The movers had just left. The Italian leather sofa was gone. The abstract art was gone. The custom rug was gone. The space was stripped bare. Just white walls and floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the city. It was echoingly empty. For a moment, the silence felt heavy, lonely. This was the space where I had tried to build a life. This was the structure I had reinforced for 3 years, trying to make it hold. But then, the sun broke through the clouds, flooding the empty room with light. I walked to the center of the room and turned in a slow circle. It wasn't empty. It was open. Michael had called it a narcissistic injury. He was right. But standing there, I realized something deeper. We are terrified of the void. We hold on to rotting structures, onto people who drain us, onto fixer-upper relationships, because we are afraid of the empty lot. We think an empty space is a failure. But an architect knows the truth. An empty space isn't a loss. It is a site. It is potential. It is freedom. I wasn't just a landscape architect anymore. I was the architect of my own life. And for the first time, I had a clean slate. No unstable foundations. No hidden costs. Just space. Space to design something that actually served me. Space to build something that would last. I took a photo of the empty, sunlit room. I didn't post it with a caption about revenge. I posted it with one word: groundbreaking. If you are holding on to a structure that is rotting just because you are afraid of the empty lot, let it burn. You can build something better. Share this if you're ready to break ground on your own life.